for an entrepreneur, it's almost counterintuitively, the magic lies in the personality. The business skills are somewhat easier to train. It's the easier of the two to train, if there is an easier path. But it's harder to train people to think and act and behave differently. And if you don't speak as openly as I'm trying to right now, if you try and dance around the issue of this, too many people will fall victim to this. I'm trying to get more entrepreneurs into the system, but when I speak that way, it doesn't sound like I'm trying to do that. If we can find it again as an entrepreneur, I think that we'll be so well placed, not only locally, but globally, to lead the way in entrepreneurship.
How's it, guys? I'm Hiten.
And I'm Jamil.
And we're the co-founders at Unconventional CA. And today we're just here to tell you a little bit more about Igniting Growth.
Igniting Growth is really about helping you understand your why. Why are you in business? And why is your business not flourishing?
So, if you're an entrepreneur who's feeling stuck, you feel that you have unutilized potential and your business is able to flourish to the next level, but it isn't there just yet.
Or if you are in corporate and you need to take your side hustle to the next level,
then be sure to follow us on social media, where we will be sharing over the next few months personal stories of entrepreneurs that we've helped evolve and ignite growth in their personal journeys and in their businesses.
And what better way to learn from other entrepreneurs that we've supported as Unconventional CA, and learning from them and taking some of those nuggets of information and incorporating them into your business.
So hit that follow button on all the social media platforms, and be sure to follow our latest podcast launch on YouTube.
Also, we have some exciting news for all you future millionaires and budding entrepreneurs out there. So I'm not able to share more, but please follow us on social media and you'll see the exciting announcement in the next couple of months.
Igniting growth.
Igniting growth.
Igniting growth.
Welcome to another episode of On the Couch with the Unconventional CA. My name is Jamil Khan. Today I have a special guest with me, Dr. Shaheim Patel, who's the Academic Dean of Regent Business School. Dr. Shahiem, good to have you on the channel and the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jamil. I'm looking forward to having a good chat about entrepreneurship and just sharing what we know about how to grow the economy.
Amazing. Before we jump into it, I'm going to hit you with an icebreaker question.
Sure.
What's the weirdest food you've ever tried, and did you like it?
Wow. I didn't have breakfast this morning, so it's a good question to be asking me. I would probably, shucks, man. I've probably eaten a lot of unconventional food, if I can use the term unconventional CAs. Two things spring to mind. The one, I don't know if it's unconventional to others, but to me, I eat swordfish.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so swordfish kind of makes me think that I'm eating something from like a cartoon, perhaps, maybe. That is the one. And the other one, I think a lot of South Africans would have eaten is mopani worms.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't have the greatest experience. I'm always trying new things out. But for some reason, I had like an itchy throat for the next week or so. And I don't know if that was a mental thing or if it was something the actual worms did to me. But those are some of the weird things that I've eaten in my life, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So you'd say the swordfish was better than the mopani worms?
Yeah, look, I mean, I like seafood. So swordfish had a fairly familiar texture. If nobody told me it's swordfish, I'd have just thought it's like a fish. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, you know.
Okay.
So it is more like a mental thing than a physical thing. A swordfish doesn't have a unique taste per se that I can say it tastes like chicken or something like that. Yeah.
Fish is fish. Eh?
Fish is fish at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay. No, awesome. Okay, so let's jump into it. So the first question I have for you today, right, is from your perspective as academic dean, right? What would you say are the most crucial skills or knowledge areas that entrepreneurs should possess or develop? And I mean, this can touch both on the business side and also individual personal traits, you know?
Yeah, it's an interesting differentiation between business and personal traits that you make, Jamil, because I think for an entrepreneur, it's almost counterintuitively, the magic lies in the personality. The business skills are somewhat easier to train. No, it's the easier of the two to train, if there is an easier part. But it's harder to train people to think and act and behave differently. And I think an entrepreneur in the construct of society, entrepreneurs have to behave differently to you and I. I think that they have to have qualities of resilience, qualities of patience. I think empathy is far too often overlooked. Understanding people's problems, that's what empathy is about. You know, understanding people's problems and finding the solution to those problems. So on the personal side of things, I could probably list 100 traits or characteristics that I think entrepreneurs generally should have. If I take it one step further, I think that the average entrepreneur tends to lack those because they don't realize that that's what they should be focusing on. They're more focusing on product development and new market acquisitions and market share and, you know, all the buzzwords that they heard on a podcast or on a YouTube clip or on a reel. You know what I mean? Like they kind of fall victim to this idea that if I don't have those things in place, I'm never going to be a good entrepreneur. And if I then maybe shift it to the sort of business side of things, it's not as though you can neglect those. I think that kind of does form the foundation in many ways. But in my mind at least, a good understanding of the supply chain of goods, the supply chain of services, believe it or not, there is such a thing. Understanding, being very well aware of your surroundings, meaning be aware of what's happening in the news, understand what are the issues of the day. Because even within all of that, there's opportunity. And so, yeah, I suppose as an opening set of remarks, those are some of the things that I think entrepreneurs should ideally have innately, but it's not something that can't be taught. It's just perhaps a difficult journey to be taught.
No, thanks for that. So I think just to summarize that, what I would say is there's actually a big focus on personal skills and skills around personal mastery as an entrepreneur. And some of the important elements we touched on was resilience and
empathy
resilience
is a big one.
and empathy, correct. Resilience and empathy and knowing who you're dealing with in your business is crucial. And I almost want to add and say, from a personal mastery point of view, the one thought which came to mind was around how much as an entrepreneur we actually have to find what we as individuals are special at.
Yes.
And what our personalities are as individuals, and try to leverage those strengths to be a better entrepreneur. Because you and I, we're not all good at all things.
Yes.
But I know as a person, I'm strong at, potentially when it comes to understanding people, empathy.
Yes.
And if I'm going to be a successful entrepreneur, how do I leverage that strength to actually be a better entrepreneur than anyone else?
No, sure.
So that was the one part on the personal side. And on the business side, what I heard you say was definitely business skills can be learned. But I think on the business side of things, understanding what's happening currently in the world, and understanding and looking for the opportunity as well. And then I guess this is a nice segue into the next question, because you at Regent Business School focus a lot on the business skills, right? And so my next question is, how does your institute support entrepreneurship and innovation among students and your alumni?
Sure. Yeah, again, interesting, Jamil. I think knowing what I know about Regent Business School and its culture, knowing what I know about the work being done by Unconventional CA, I think that there's a very similar mindset and approach to promoting problem solving as a discipline in society, looking at 21st century digital skills and understanding what role that plays in the journey of an entrepreneur. And I think if we then take it to the point of saying, what does it mean for the individual entrepreneur who's trying to make it on a daily basis, and then at the level of scale that is required for entrepreneurs to really meaningfully move our economy forward, that's where our focus lies. And we do it in probably 2 or 3 ways, and I'll try and keep it brief. Again, touching on what I think the Unconventional CA mindset and ethos is about saying that understanding holistically what a human being is about. That's what these three little, let's call them legs, if I can. That's what we build our education, our contemporary higher education ecosystem on. So number one, we promote very strongly our, let's call it so-called theoretical education that one would typically have experienced at any education institution.
Okay.
So lectures, assignments, exams, tutors, those kind of things, right? And that forms the bulk of what we do.
Okay.
However, again, keeping in mind the holistic kind of development that we're after, we recognize that the so-called theoretical work is not sufficient. We need to supplement that with some kind of practical, safe place to go to almost break technology, because in breaking technology freely without somebody saying you need to pay for the new machine, giving our students the opportunity to go into a place, and we call this place the iLead Lab, which is an academic makerspace.
Okay.
And we say to them, go in there, experience what you hear about 4IR, go and experience it. Don't only experience it, but do something with it. Can you be creative in a way that you'd normally be creative, perhaps in an engineering school, not a business school, but go and do that, have that experience as a supplement to what you get in the classroom. Because now you're starting to experience that actually, I'm not just a left brain or a right brained individual. I'm a holistic individual who is capable of being analytical and creative at the same time. And again, it's somewhat counterintuitive to experience that in a business school. But I think in the counterintuitive lies the opportunity for us to make a difference. So we expose our students meaningfully to different technologies in the iLead Lab that is aimed at giving them, again, 21st century digital skills that is separating them in the market when they leave our doors into the workplace. Or, in this case, into the entrepreneurial realm. But that's not, again, where it ends. We need to then close the loop somewhat. If we're giving you if we're giving you theoretical knowledge, practical knowledge, we then need to give you something that says, how do I monetize this? How do I become a good entrepreneur? And we call that the Red Hub. It stands for the Regent Enterprise Development Hub, where you go into the Red Hub and you get exposure to the unconventional CA, and you get exposure to the unconventional CA methodology, opportunities that exist in your space and in other partners of ours. And we have an entire ecosystem of partners sitting in the Red Hub to facilitate that, all aimed at developing our entrepreneur holistically.
Amazing. So I think if we can summarize that nicely, from a Regent Business School point of view, your view on entrepreneurs and becoming a successful entrepreneur is to start with the theoretical part. Maybe not necessarily start, but we focus on theory, we focus on the practical part of learning 4IR skills and practically some of the things you can do to be a successful entrepreneur. And the third part is connecting you with partners, and partners that can help you along your journey to become a successful entrepreneur.
Sure.
Amazing. Let's move on to the third question, right? And I think you've already touched on some of this already, right? But what resources or programs does your school offer that could benefit aspiring entrepreneurs? And I think you've mentioned one being the Red Hub, and I think the whole ecosystem itself,
Yes.
right? But do you have mentorship programs or incubation programs and potential access to funding? I think, what are some of the other legs that you offer to entrepreneurs that are kind of specific?
Yeah, again, interesting set of ideas around that question, Jamil. And for me, I think, we often, as South Africans, maybe as Africans, and perhaps even as human beings, we think of something like mentors or mentorship programs, and we have a particular mindset that springs to mind. And we think that, it's the person who's been through it all dispensing wisdom and knowledge onto me who's trying to make it. And I think for most mentorship programs, that tends to be the way it gets run. Maybe there's a good reason for that. Maybe it's meant to be that way in certain instances, right? But I don't think it's necessarily meant to be that way in all instances. I certainly don't think it's meant to be that way for people who are trying to grow as an entrepreneur. I think there needs to be a level of parity and equality even with the experienced and the inexperienced. So almost delineating the idea that there's a sage who's got all the wisdom, and there's this sort of new kid on the block requiring to draw on all of these things. I think it needs to be more conversational, and that's what we do with some of our mentorship programs. And that's why our mentorship programs that we do run are very bespoke. I mean, you had a guest earlier talking about the retail industry. We've got a mentorship program in the retail industry of roughly about between 80 and 120 students a year, where we do group mentorship. Because we recognize that mentorship doesn't always have to be a one-to-one relationship. Sometimes the problems that exist in retail, and specifically entrepreneurial retail, are common. So you need to have 2, 3, 5, 10 people talking and discussing and having a conversation with a mentor, not necessarily only grasping what you can. I think there's a room for that, like I keep on saying. So again, it's just to think somewhat left of center around what the tradition might have been. So that's some of the resources, like I say, bespoke programs for mentorship. But that's not the only one. I mean, if I think it a little bit further, specifically in entrepreneurship, we've got a host of students where we every year we give them an amount of, let's call it seed capital. It's a token amount of money, and I'll even mention it's about 250 rand. And we say to students that if you were given 250 rand as seed capital or seed funding into a business, what would you do? And you need to track the income and expenses, and business training. You need to do all of the things, and we show them what we want, what we expect to see. We expect to see the supply chain and what actions have you taken to ensure that you get the best quality goods into your business and the best quality goods out, so too as services. And we give them, as you mentioned earlier, we give them the sort of personality trait development training. We've got a full-time psychologist on the program to try and help our students identify where their gaps are and to deliver on those, right? So 250 Rand is just basically a token amount of money to showcase what's possible. And if I have to share with you, and maybe I'm sort of preempting questions that you may have to follow up.
Yeah, that's fine. Go for it. Yeah.
We've seen students of ours turn 250 Rand into 8,000 and 10,000 Rand in a matter of months. Okay. So therein lies the sort of other opportunities that we try or other resources that we try and make available to our students. But again, it's in a very controlled environment. It's for a specific program. It's for a specific group of students. It's not something we do for everybody, but we always try and look for the opportunity to give a different educational experience where we focus on learning, not just on teaching. Because most education institutions just care about teaching. I stand in front of a lecture class and I tell you exactly what you need to know. Whether you learn or not is not really of my concern, if I'm generalizing. And we're trying to flip that script.
No, amazing. And it sounds like, your approach is very bespoke. Although you're trying to look at the economy and say, look, from an economic point of view, we need to create and build so many entrepreneurs from an economic point of view. At the same time, people are different.
Yes.
And so how can we make it bespoke for the entrepreneur to support the entrepreneurs? There was an interesting area you touched on, which I loved, which was the mentorship side. Yeah. Because as a mentor as well, I find I learn as much from my entrepreneurs as much as they learn from me.
Yes.
And actually, the best relationships are where it's mutual that way. Then the mentor feels like they can pick up the phone and phone me.
Yes.
If I end up in a mentorship relationship where it's almost like I feel like I'm the sage, I find that the mentee doesn't really engage me.
Correct.
And I'll give you an example. So there's one entrepreneur who I was supporting on the JP Morgan Techstars Atlanta program. And that's in Atlanta in the US. It's a very tech-focused program. And for me, I was like, I want to join this program to get experience. Like, this was going to be cool for me.
Yeah.
But plugging on the other side with my mentor, he was like, well, I can see that you are here. I can see you in South Africa. Let's have conversations around expansion plans into Africa.
Yes.
I can leverage your skills on the financial part of your business.
Yeah.
And for me, actually, as a mentor, it's a networking thing.
Yes.
Like, I find that because we mentor at UCA so many entrepreneurs, we find that an entrepreneur is looking for maybe a business in waste. Yeah. And I can say, hey, look, I've already mentored this business in waste.
Sure.
Let me connect the dots.
Yes.
And so I love what you said around mentorship. It's that there's this preconceived idea that your mentor should be your sage, when actually not. Like the best mentorship arrangements are just somebody who has experience and I'm offering a different perspective.
Sure.
And that they're the one that's going to take that idea, refine it and execute it in the context of their business.
Sure.
And just to the next question, and I think what we discuss around mentorship is one of the areas which answers this question.
We are giving away a free laptop. Why?
You can't show them flames without one. You can look super intelligent without even trying.
Yeah, we'll send through the budget.
You can also take online meetings and still get important paperwork done at the same time. And if that's not enough, we're adding some muscle by giving away business support services.
A diagnostic assessment, roadmap to success, coaching session, marketing kit, and company or tax compliance.
So, if you're a budding entrepreneur and you'd like a new laptop and some muscle, like, share and follow Unconventional CA on all social media platforms and you could be the lucky winner. Good luck.
But the next question was, what are some of the common misconceptions or myths about entrepreneurship that aspiring business owners should be aware of?
Okay, I've got a thought, and maybe I should address entrepreneurs directly, and if I may.
Sure, go for it.
You may not like what I'm about to say about entrepreneurship, but I think it's important that I share it with you. It is unlikely that you will get rich or wealthy in an entrepreneurial journey. It's like a horrible thing to say, really. That doesn't mean it's impossible. That doesn't mean you can't point to so many examples of people who have done so. But if you look at the numbers of people who call themselves entrepreneurs right now and the journey that they are on, it's only as possible as you make it to be. It is entrepreneurship. If there's a myth out there, I'm not even speaking that there is a myth. I'm saying if there is a myth, that it's an easy journey, that you're going to be wealthy in 6 months' time, that the egg farm that you want to open up is the ticket to riches. I really think you need to take a self-reflection point and understand, not only internally but externally, exactly what an entrepreneurial journey is about. To me, an entrepreneur is one who's open to make repeated mistakes, who's open to recover quickly, recover cheaply, and keep on trying as if you didn't have 100 previous failures. So I think those are some of the myths, Jamil, if I can really be somewhat dramatic for a moment, in demonstrating, because I think that if you don't speak as openly as I'm trying to right now, if you try and dance around the issue of this, too many people will fall victim to this. I'm trying to get more entrepreneurs into the system, but when I speak that way, it doesn't sound like I'm trying to do that.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm trying to push people out of the system, right? But I think so that kind of friction between the reality of what you'll experience when you get here and yet come on over, it's kind of hard for people to reconcile. And through conversations like these, hopefully we'll try and make more sense of it once people get that sort of hard-hitting exposure early on, and then we can try and make it a bit easier once people have that sort of high-level understanding of what it is, what it's not, and move from there.
Amazing. I think that's probably the biggest myth that we see on our side, is that people tend to want to become entrepreneurs because it's painted as this glamorous lifestyle, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's hard, it's difficult, and you've got to be willing to put in the effort and the time to make your business, to make your entrepreneurial journey a success.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that we come across is, especially in the line of work that we do at Unconventional CA, is sometimes there's this idea of you supporting this entrepreneur in their business, and you need to grow their business.
Yeah.
But along the way in the journey, working with the entrepreneur, they get another good idea.
Correct.
And I think it touches on the point that you made, that it's about you as an individual. Because maybe your first idea is not successful.
Yeah.
Maybe your second idea is not successful. But as long as you're failing fast and failing forward, your third or fourth idea might be successful. And so the next question I want to touch on is, so arguably like two of the most important skills or entrepreneurial traits to have is risk-taking and creativity. I think my question to you is, do you agree with that, number one? And number two, from a Regent Business School point of view, how do you focus or foster those skills to create successful entrepreneurs, specifically on those skills?
Yeah. Yeah, so Jamil, I suppose if we're going to be talking about the issue of risk taking, not just in business but in life, and the issue of creativity again, not limited to the business world. As human beings, we are fundamentally and innately attuned towards some level of risk taking, and I think it's a high level of risk taking. However, somewhere along the line in our lives, whether it be at home, where you were on top of a cabinet somewhere and you were about to jump off with your cape draped around your neck, and your mom said, "You don't do that, you're going to break your arm." And you don't jump off. Or you might have even jumped off and broke your arm and you go, "I'm not doing that again."
Yeah.
So life experience teaches us and trains us to be risk averse somewhat, right? And for the few who manage to break through that, or to persist with the risk-taking sort of ability that's beyond the average, they tend to do very well in life. They tend to be very successful entrepreneurs. That's the one. You could even point to something like our education systems in the world and the way that those things have been constructed. Do they limit risk-taking? Do they limit creativity? You know, there's an interesting study. It may have been Harvard that did the study. I must check my facts. But there was an interesting study of a group of adults being given a paperclip.
Okay.
And they said, find the number of uses you could come up with for the paperclip. And these adults came up with, I think, roughly about 6 usages for the paperclip.
Okay.
They did a similar kind of thing with a group of kindergarten students, or children, as they called in the States. And you'll be surprised by the number of ideas that these kids came up with, about 300.
What?
Yeah. And it's not conventional. Yeah. It's not conventional. So some of the ideas were like, I could stretch this paperclip and make it a giant paperclip that could reach the moon. Like, it's ridiculous. But it's their version of, that's the type of risk taking they'll take. I'll take a risk and get to the moon using a paperclip. And that's creativity as well. Do we as adults have it? No, we can only use 6 things. We can say, well, okay, I can tie a paper together. I can maybe tie lots of papers together. I don't know. Like really, we've dulled our own sense of curiosity, our own sense of excitement about life. And if we can find it again as an entrepreneur, I think that we'll be so well placed, not only locally but globally, to lead the way in entrepreneurship.
Amazing. And I love how you touched on the education system and how that's made us, dull from a risk-taking point of view. Because I know, being a CA and unconventional CA,
yes,
we try to be unconventional CA.
Yes.
But I feel as though because of the education that we went through, in terms of, especially around risk, and I did risk identification and audit, and you listed all the risks that if you take the step, what the risks could be. I think that basically dulled most entrepreneurial ventures. That
you were forced into a box.
Correct.
The unconventional CA probably only exists because the convention wasn't working. Like, if I'm honest about it, right? I'm glad to see your team finds it funny, because it's true. And so when you ask about what are we doing at Regent Business School, we're trying to break that down. We're trying to say that, listen, I mean, you touched on it earlier. You said that when you're in a mentor-mentee relationship, you learn as much. Right now, one of the most interesting and exciting things I find about being an academic, and specifically about being a lecturer, is that I've got the freedom to tell my class, you know more than me. I can say that openly. I can say to them that the knowledge sits in the room. My job is not to teach you, it's to let you know that you already know. Because you may not know the facts about things, but you can Google those things. Facts are easily available, right? But all I'm wanting to do is to give you the confidence to say that no matter what the facts are, and no matter what the problem of the day is, I've got the confidence to meet those challenges. And not only meet them, but to make those challenges so small that I'm ready for bigger challenges. And that's the essence and ethos of what we're trying to promote at Regent.
Cool. So, Doc, I think we're coming to the end of our segment. So I think final question from my side, and it's a double-headed question, right, is how can entrepreneurs effectively leverage the network and resources available through academic institutions like yourself And at the same time, the entrepreneurs out there listening to this, where can they find out more information about your organization and what you provide?
Sure. I think for me, it's just such a simplistic answer, Jamil, around conversation. If I think about Regent Business School or any academic institution as a home, the institution is just the walls and the roof. Really, it's nothing more than that. The painting on the walls and the furniture in the rooms are all up to you as the student, you as the entrepreneur, to make it as pretty or as ugly as the home ought to be. And so, as much as we're trying to invite you and say, here's a wall, we've got some paint lying on the floor, how about trying to see what the paint looks like on the wall? You still rely on somebody to walk in there and get themselves a little bit dirty and mess on the wall. And if it doesn't look great, it's fine, we'll paint over it again. But the point is not to be fearful of making a mess. So when you ask me the question, how do they get connected? It's exactly that. And that's part of the entrepreneurial challenge. You've got enough things to worry about. You've got to worry about your personality traits that we spoke about, work on all of that, be informed, keep reading, keep watching the news globally, locally, regionally. Make sure the business is running itself, the supply chain we spoke about, and the customer satisfaction that we talk about, and the customer centricity. All of that matters. And then within all of that madness, you still need to connect yourself to an academic institution. And you need to have a mentor, and you need to have all of these things. When we talk about the barriers to becoming an entrepreneur, those are barriers. But it's unfortunate that that is the nature of the beast. So we extend a hand to anybody, students and non-students, and we invite those individuals, entrepreneurs or otherwise, to say, come and say hello, come and have a chat. And where that chat leads to is anybody's guess. Right? That's the first thing. So when you ask how did they get hold of people at Regent, our website, www.regent.ac.za. We're on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, as it's now known as. But physically, show up. I worked with somebody last week as a closing story, just to share with you what I think innovation and creativity looks like. There's a young lady who's finished her undergrad and she's doing a sort of LLB, 2 years LLB. She did BCom law and she's doing LLB now, right? And she's already thinking about applying for jobs at the big law firms, not next year, but the following year. Because, it's a waiting list and you need to apply timelessly and so forth, right? Now, remember, this is not an entrepreneurship thing. This is just somebody looking to get into the so-called matrix, as Andrew Tate would call it, right? And she's thinking about, how do I stand out of the crowd? Because normally you go into a portal somewhere online and you upload your details and you hope for the best. And she came in at a chat and she said, how do I stand out? I said, okay. Had it been me in the hiring department at those law firms, I'd look for somebody who's trying to stand out. Because, really, it's hard enough for me to pick out of thousands of applications, 12 or 24, whatever the number is, of highly talented individuals. So I said to her, she came into our lab, she laser cutted 8 boxes, because it's 8 organizations that she's applying to, and she personalized each box for the institution. And she got their logo, and she got the established in 1783 and 1820 whatever, and she wrote a name there, aspiring future candidate attorney, and she placed her CV in those boxes, and she's now going to go and hand those out physically at the door.
Amazing.
Now, out of the 8, there may be some people in the hiring committees that says, how dare you do this? Well, okay, good for you. If that's your mindset, then talented people won't come and work for you, right? But out of the 8, there's a good chance that 1, 2, 3, 5, all might say, well, this is amazing. This is an actually great step that you've taken beyond just going onto our portal. So what does that relate to in the message that I'm trying to say? Show up physically. In an age of digital everything, people have forgotten that I can get into my car, I can get into a taxi, I can walk, I can use a tricycle if I need to get to where I need to, so I stand out of the crowd. And if that isn't the essence of entrepreneurship, then I'm not sure what is.
Amazing. Just that entire story made me think around, at Unconventional CA, we're a relatively new organization, right? And so when we thought about we also had the question as a business to say, how do we stand out?
Yeah.
Because from an entrepreneurship development point of view, there's a lot of organizations that do that. And one of the things was, because we started focusing wholly on unconventional CA just after COVID. One of the things that we found in of itself that was a unique selling proposition was that we would go out and meet people.
Yes.
Because what COVID did was push people into their home to just do Teams meetings and Zoom meetings.
Yes.
But it's amazing that you just touched on that as well. And I think that's just the spirit of entrepreneurship.
Sure.
Is continuously evolving, being creative, and taking those risks to get your business to the next level.
UCA team is a team that makes life easy. They make life easy for the business owners. When you get to the training, you think you know nothing, whilst you know everything. It's just that you were taking things for granted. But the way they designed the program, they designed it in a way that they open your mind to see that even the small things matter in business. I like them a lot, a lot. They make training so easy. You enjoy training like you're just in the playground, whilst they are giving you the very special tools to use in your daily business. They are making life easy using the examples that you practice every day. Sometimes you're taking those examples for granted, not knowing they are very, very important in you as a business owner. Igniting Growth 2024.
I'm going to end off with another icebreaker question for you. This will be a nice one for you, right? Is because being a doctor and an academic dean, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
My 4-year-old daughter gave me advice as I walked out this morning out of the house. I don't think that's the best advice I've ever given, but at 4, she's already advising me. I think it was advice that I gave myself. It might sound I don't know, what's the word? I don't know. I love too much in my own world.
But no.
Yeah, it will be okay. I think it's as simple as that. We get caught up in the daily fears of everything. Are we going to do a good enough job? Am I going to be on time? Is somebody going to think I'm not worthy of the work that I'm doing? You live in constant fear, right? Everybody has those fears. And I think if you can remove yourself from yourself, ironically, and look at life almost from another planet or from the moon, and look at the earth in such a small little ball floating about in space in the grandeur of the universe, then the little fears that we have become so small because the earth is small. And then if you just try and put that into like a phrase, it will be okay. If you've got that level of calm in your mind, your thought processes become clearer, your actions become more crisp, your outcomes become more achievable. And I think that for me is the best advice I've given myself, and hopefully I can share that with somebody else.
Awesome. And I'd be remiss to not say this, but this morning my wife was listening to a podcast on Zen.
Yeah.
And I think what you've just described is, in essence, the word Zen. And the podcast itself was around the Japanese culture and how, because in Japanese culture, it's important to show up in everything in life. So the way you dress, the way you act, like the origami that they do. Every single thing that they do, they've got a process.
Yeah.
And what that created was this fear of, because I've got to be on the whole day, I've got a fear that I'm not going to perform.
Sure.
And that's why they then created Zen.
Yeah.
So I think that was just very relevant to your point at the end of this. Dr. Shahiem, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate your time today. Thanks to the listeners and the entrepreneurs watching this. Please do follow us on all our social channels and follow Regent Business School. And I hope this helped even a few of you out there today. So thanks for your time.